Okay, all right, so I'm gonna, very much of an audience, but Richard. Can you hear us, Richard?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great, fabulous. So I'm gonna open the meeting of the May 9th task force at 6:35, I guess. And I'll call the task force members to order. Betty Hall. Here. Ann Harrison. Here. Sarah Miller. Here. Sue Bilbrick. Here. And Richard Smith.
Here.
And I'm the chair, Chris Oley, and I'm here also.
And I'll call the planning board meeting to order. Mary Foley here, Sue Philbrick here, Chris Olney here, Sarah here. And Gail asked that we all try to speak to the screen because in this room it's hard to be heard otherwise. So I guess Kathy, if you want to.
I thought you were saving the seats for other.
Well, join in. But if you want to speak, you'll have to speak.
I'm just here so I can hear because I agree with that comment. I can't.
Okay. Yeah,
Yeah, the microphone is a silver bottom bar with the green lights at the bottom.
So we talk at that thing. Okay, the first item on the agenda, I guess we're just gonna co-chair this as we go along. Acknowledgement of receipt of correspondence. There were 2 emails from Ms. Giovanni. I guess we've all read them. I don't know if they need a response at this point. And I don't think we've received any other correspondence. Gail, have we?
One of the planning board did receive a time sensitive comment, communication from the town of Wenham.
I did see that. Okay, so updated schedule. So just so we're all on the same page here. Tonight, we're going to go over the final district boundaries and the zoning parameters that are going to make this work with the compliance model. Oh, and Gar Morse just arrived.
Start now.
Let's just sit over here.
Sit over here.
So tonight we'll be discussing the compliance model, final boundaries, the final zoning parameters. If we all agree tonight, Emily says she can get us a draft of the zoning language by early next week, Monday or Tuesday, I guess. And there's Sandy Farmer Turner. And so the next Thursday we'll meet again and review a draft of the actual zoning language.
Great.
And if that all works, then the following week, we're gonna have a public hearing on the 23rd.
Public forum.
Excuse me, public forum. Where the language will be discussed along with the districts and the parameters and the design guidelines. And then at that point, the planning board can vote to send this on to the select board for them to pass it on to the state at their next meeting. And we hope that can all happen by early June.
Nice.
Sure. Yeah.
So the other thing, I sent an email to the planning board. We are not going to meet on our regularly scheduled meeting on Monday because happily our regular business seems to have taken a rest. We'll meet jointly with the task force the next 2 Thursdays. And the 16th and the 20th days. And then we will resume the our 2nd and 4th planning board Mondays of the month for planning board, except that the first one is Memorial Day, so it will be a Tuesday, May 28th. And that's when we will restart the hearing with cell signaling. And they have been given the preliminary comments from Weston Sampson, and you're gonna, if you haven't already, you're putting it in our, I believe it's gonna go in the meeting folder. He'll let us know where it is. The meeting folder. We thought we'd put a subfolder in meetings not for a specific meeting, but for cell signaling, so, because it's gonna carry over for a number of meetings. So we'll be able to see the Weston Sampson report there, and, we expect that the presentation that they will give us will reflect, their initial, review of that. The other thing that we asked them for, this was, Mark and I talked about this, is an addition to their package, which is what would be completed in phase one only. Because their package is for phase one and phase two. So, we wanted to see architecturally what, if they never build phase two, what. Yeah, so that's where we're gonna start with our meeting with them, will be on the 28th, and we'll then resume with our second and fourth Mondays. With a number of them being for cell signaling.
And I assume that we'll be able to organize the planning board at that point?
Yes, the 28th will also do a reorganization and a lot of other things.
The planning board is also meeting on the 20th,
Thank you.
jointly with the board of selectmen to appoint a new member.
And that time is, we're still figuring that out when it's on the agenda, because we have a couple of conflicts. Of course,
Have you received any applications?
Yes.
we have one. So we'll put that in the meeting folder. Debbie Powers has it.
Okay. So that's the schedule. So we're gonna have a rather busy couple of weeks, and then June comes and
Take a vacation.
we can take a vacation.
Now we all go talk about cell signaling.
It doesn't sound like it, yeah. Sounds like maybe July, yeah.
Well, I'm talking about the task force. Okay, so at this point, we can start talking about the overlay districts again. Mark has been making a few tweaks here and there to get us into compliance, and I think we have, so Mark, I'm gonna turn this over to you.
Okay, so I am gonna try and share my screen. So I'm gonna first just run through the district maps and just point out where there's been a few
That's not showing, by the way.
It's not showing.
All I'm saying is your,
Yeah, he's trying to open them right now.
okay.
kids, so. Let's just do them in
Nope.
alphabetical order.
There you are.
There you go. So this is the Allen to Lincoln Street district along Summer Street. There has been no changes to this district. What happens was is the model that I presented last meeting. I forwarded to Emily with the map showing the sub-district of H and C Street districts. So they then reran the model.
You need to
with-
speak up.
Oh, they then reran the model with 4 districts, including the sub-districts as well. So it's a total of 6. But it's 4 real districts. So this one didn't change. So this stayed the same. Yeah, this one's easy.
Just so I understand, Mark, Emily's kind of validated that or whatever she has to do with it.
That's correct. I'll show you a couple things after we run through the districts. I have an updated chart of ours that has numbers.
Okay.
And will you be able to send us electronic copies of that
Yes,
tomorrow?
and we're gonna post it on the MBTA section as well. So this is the beach and street to C Street district. So the red, the sub-district for Beach Street, this did not change at all. The C Street sub-district changed. At the last meeting, I had indicated that we needed to add these three properties here to get a little larger area. So they are shown up, but there was one property right here on the other side of C Street. Because it was so small and it was a zero multifamilies. By eliminating that, it helps us to keep our the density up. Yes. So that's the only changes to these districts here. Question.
Will you at some point talk about what the regulations are for the different colored
Yes.
districts? Okay.
So the last district and this district, there's been no changes to the various parameters that we had talked about last time. Next district. We can still go through those. Next district is Beaver Dam Road, which is no change to the parameters and no change to the district. I think I had mentioned at the last meeting, oh, maybe I didn't, because I figured out that at the last meeting, I was able to drop the density here from 110 units to put a cap of 100 units. So the model has a cap of 100 units on this property.
How many is that per acre?
5 acres. No, it's
Yes.
not.
600.
What?
Sorry, I forget it.
Yeah, but it's on the chart. It's just slightly
But
below
it's fine.
15, I believe.
And that's still at 4 stories.
That's correct. District did have a few changes in order to here. There we go. So in order to get the density up, we had to if we eliminate properties that are below the 6,000 square foot minimum to do a multi. It eliminates, it reduces the total area, and since our area was over 20 acres, by knocking off an acre, it pushes the density per acre up. So we eliminated several properties that showed 0 in the model as far as being able to develop multifamilies. But we were able to keep the integrity of the unit of the district and meet the total required size. So there are 2 small parcels here, if you notice at the upper left-hand corner here where I'm moving the cursor. Those 2 little parcels were removed, but we still have, the sub-districts are touching right here. So we believe that still meets the contiguity requirement.
So those are 2 before Bryce Lane, right?
Yeah. No, after Bryce. Bryce Lane is right here. Or before, depending which way you. Then as we go down.
Well, what's the street beyond those 2 properties you excluded?
Are those in Newport Park?
They're across the street from Newport Park.
Yeah.
So there is 2 right here.
And what's the street right beyond, west of those?
It's the Newport Park driveway.
Yeah.
No, I'm talking on the left side of Pine Street. He deleted 2 on the left side of Pine
Okay.
Street.
So directly, Bryce Lane is still there in the district. It's the 2 properties just beyond Bryce Lane.
I think that's a driveway, isn't
Is that a driveway?
Across from the 2 private houses in Newport.
Yeah, that's somebody's driveway. We eliminated these two small parcels. And the other parcels that were eliminated were down here, and they're very tiny, so we'll zoom in a little bit. Right here at the entrance to Morse Court, we eliminated a couple properties on either side of the entrance to Morse Court. And we also eliminated one here on Elm Street, right here.
So how many on Morse Court were eliminated?
I believe it was 4.
Okay,
It's like 6 and 8. Then we eliminated one on Elm Street. So those changes allowed us to we basically meet our density requirements.
All right.
Great.
Yeah. That's-
So,
Can I just summarize what I think we just went through, just not everybody was at the forum, so almost like you had to be at the forum but we have 4 districts, 2 of which have sub-districts. All of the districts meet the collective districts meet the requirements of the state. The sub-district, a district has zoning parameters, and sub-districts of can have different parameters than each other. Okay, and the goal here, some of the districts have density that is 15 units per acre, and some is less, and some is more, but all total, we have a certain number of units and a certain density. Okay.
What does that mean?
So these, well, let's first go through these. These are the district parameters. So the acreages have changed a little bit, particularly the Pine Street Woods Park. The underlying districts have stayed the same. Minimum lot sizes have stayed the same. The new thing is the 100-unit cap, the LCD. We had the caps before for 4 units on the C Street parcels and 5 of the Pine Street parcels.
So in the sub-districts, which are more residential, you can change the
Yes.
possibilities.
and which is, yeah, so C Street is the one limited to 4. Yeah.
So the Pine Street sub-district is limited regardless of the lot size to 5 units.
Yep.
And the C Street sub-district, regardless of the lot size, is maximum for.
Yep. But they have to have a minimum lot size.
Right.
It's that, yeah.
Mark, have we,
Still 4.
So Richard. Just
Mark,
Richard,
have we eliminated the size for additional, the square footage for additional units? I don't see that here.
Yeah, I did not put that on this chart, but the reason why we get to the minimum lot size, because we have 2,000 for the first unit and 2,000 for each additional, so that's how we get to 6,000 under the minimum lot size.
Can you send one over to Gar?
So, so that's how we have, now doesn't mean that the parcel still needs to meet the underlying zoning district. I mean, that's what'll come out in the in the text of the zoning that will probably refer to the underlying zoning district requirements for lot size.
Except for Allen to Lincoln.
Yeah, Allen to Lincoln, we were able to boost that up a little bit. And by having, I think the first, it's 2,500 for the base unit and 2,000 for each.
I just have a comment on that, okay? For ease of use of the bylaws, I think it would be useful to have this information in the overlay section and not refer back to the underlying lot size, because if we were to change the underlying zoning at any point, that would impact this, and I just think for ease, it needs to be included in the zoning for the overlay district.
So show
Yes.
what the underlying,
No, it's not underlying.
No, are you?
Show that for these overlay districts, this is the minimum lot size
Regardless of what happens to other
underneath.
underneath.
Yeah.
oh, no, it's not the minimum lot size.
Yes, it is.
No,
It says minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet. That's the minimum lot size. It's 2,000 per unit.
yes,
So there's a 6,000 minimum lot size.
but if you
Because you can't, you're not in this overlay district if you're under 6,000.
you cannot build a multifamily. if
Right, you're not,
under 6,000.
you're not covered by the overlay district rules.
That's
So it's a minimum
I
lot
did-
size
Mhm.
for each of those. And I just think it needs to be in the zoning accordingly.
I think that's a very good point. I brought this up in an earlier meeting. And I think we all agreed that it was important that the distinction be made that this MBTA zoning only applies to units, to construction that is multifamily. And that would mean 6,000 square feet. That would be good. So, Mark, you have not really made any significant change to the base lot size or the secondary lot sizes. It's all 2,000, 2,000, and I think you said one section is 2,500. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So there is now a model that shows the number of units that can be built on each parcel in the spreadsheet. I don't know. I haven't seen that yet. I imagine it has not changed much at all from the previous. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah, I want to be sure I understand what you're saying about not referencing this document, not referencing the underlying.
Well,
So there was an attempt to do that for the form by putting little red asterisks by.
which is fine as far as explaining it. But
Yeah.
I'm saying when the bylaws drafted,
Get rid of the red.
all
dots.
of these parameters should be included in the overlay district.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And not say
Not
building lot coverage, go to the underlying district.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
Because the underlying districts could change.
And we don't want these to change with them.
Right. That this whole table should be included, or that, the top part,
it's a very useful table.
yeah, should be included in the zoning change. Put it in as used.
The column that's called Newport Powder House include in the red and blue, that included Elm Street in the blue.
Yes.
So Elm Street is 4 stories.
Yes.
Okay,
That allowed us to get the density up.
yeah, I, the last time I looked at it, it was just Powder House Lane that was that dense.
Yeah, we had to shift down. And because we eliminated a little bit
You
on.
need to talk louder, Mark.
Oh, so we had to shift it down in order to get the density up a little bit, so.
It might be useful to, for example, the minimum lot size, instead of saying 6,000, you might want to say 6,000 square feet.
Yeah, we need to put units in all these.
Building lot coverage 40%.
Yeah.
Just, if it's gonna be more lines, be a good idea.
Yeah.
And instead of building and parking lot coverage, you should have building and impervious surface. Cause
That's how it's
And
written.
how is that different from total lot coverage?
that's total lot coverage is structure plus impervious surface.
And what's the difference between that building and parking?
They're the same.
coverage? They're
That's
the
what
same thing.
total,
Yeah, they're the same thing.
it's just different words than we use in our zoning. and We
Oh, it's
wanna be
because-
consistent with, it's
state.
because that's what's in the model.
Yeah,
Ah.
exactly.
Okay, when we
Okay.
go from the model to something that we're going to present for people to vote on.
Right.
Maybe we should eliminate some of the duplicates.
Yes.
Got it.
If I can just point out one thing, I'm a little, I understand what underlies this table, but if I were looking at this table without that knowledge, I would not be able to tell how many units could be built on a 2-acre lot.
Scroll
Go
down.
down, you have to scroll down.
He needs to, he can't, he doesn't have the table in
You
front of him.
can't see the, what's going
So,
Yeah, I still would not know how many units could be built on a
Possibly
2-acre lot.
Get down.
Right,
What-
you
what
need
I'm-
to add in the 2,000 per unit.
Yes, what I'm getting at is that without showing the base, I know it's got couple of confusing numbers, but those two numbers for the base unit and for additional units are the only way that you can determine how many units can be built on a particular size parcel.
Right.
If you were looking only at this chart, you would not be able to tell me how many units could be built on a 2-acre parcel. At least I don't think you could.
We've lost the sound, guys.
Okay, how
Can you
about
hear us
now?
now?
Yes, now I can hear you, but we didn't hear you for probably the last 8 minutes.
Can you see us now?
Yes,
Yeah, it was
I,
after Richard Smith said possible future units, and then we lost you.
Oh, gosh.
Yep.
It's Richard's fault.
It'll be on the
I,
record.
All right.
I would have said, I would have asked if it was something I said, but you couldn't hear me.
No, no.
I think for the minutes, you can say that we discussed adding a row to the table that clarifies the minimum area per unit.
Minimum lot size,
Yeah.
lot square footage per unit.
I think it'd be very useful in the presentation to have examples of how those numbers are calculated.
Yeah, I think so too.
It's confusing.
It is confusing.
And we do it for, each district.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, when you try to explain that you've got a minimum lot size and you've got a lot size for the first unit and you've got additional lot sizes for subsequent units, people's eyes glaze over.
Yes.
But if we just had a few examples, that would really help.
The other eye glazing is that most people assume when you say square feet, you're talking about square feet of building.
Yeah,
And we have to be careful to say that this is how many square feet of lot you need to have a unit,
Right.
regardless of the size
That
of the
was
unit.
what people were confused of at the last form.
I was,
With good reason.
okay, so.
Well, and it's simple. You say. For Pine, for the Pine Street sub-district, you have 6,000 for 3 units, 8,000 for 4, and 10,000 or more for 5,
okay.
for lot size. Instead of doing it per unit, it might be easier, you know, because then you don't get the confusion between structure size and.
Yeah, yeah.
There's another table that says two units.
Yeah.
6, yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay, Mark, are you done, Mark?
Well, I don't know if you want to go through the rest of this.
Yeah, we didn't finish this.
But it's pretty much the same as previously presented. We didn't change any of the heights from the last time, any of the coverages, parking requirements. Because we changed the districts a little bit, the model densities changed slightly for some of these districts. The capacity also changed slightly. And so what we have is the current model capacity is at 583. Existing units at 245, so possible future units would be 330.
And we can't get that total down.
It'll lower density.
What's
Yeah,
the,
so
I was
that-
gonna ask you what the density of this wound up, because the last time it was like 4.9 or.
15.2, is that where it
Yes.
is?
Yeah, so it's pretty close.
Yes.
Yes, Gail.
She hadn't put it down.
I just lowered it.
Okay,
Duh.
Clarify, because the last time we met as a joint board, the height was in Beaver Dam Road was 5 feet. So it actually has
5
changed,
stories.
5 stories, sorry.
Actually,
So I think for the forum, you had lowered it to 4, but it actually has changed since we met as in a meeting. So
Yeah.
just to clarify that that was actually a reduction. I think there was there one other reduction?
Well, the
Some of the other dense details did change
Some of
slightly.
the other details, so for example, Pine Street, I was able to increase the setbacks to 15 feet on all sides without it changing the density. As opposed to 5 feet in front. 10 feet on the other
That's general
side.
district, yeah.
So, probably because the lot's a little bigger, it can affect the density, just like, reducing the LCD to 4 stories didn't affect the density as well, so.
And the reduction in that density was in response to public comment.
Yes.
Thank you, God.
Yes, Mary.
I have, a few questions. Can we do maximum units per lot on the other districts? And Newport, and Beach Street and Allen.
Let's see. Port the Powder House.
I don't think we want
So-
maximums on that because Powder House is so dense already.
Because it's all one parcel where the apartments are, so.
So like you got 29 units.
Yeah. Same thing at Newport Park.
Yeah.
It's one parcel and there's,
We want to
40
increase the
units.
density.
so we don't want to put a cap there, and we also can't put a cap on the Beach Street because of the same thing. We cap it, there's, I think, what, 40 units or so in that development there. So we can't really, and
You
so,
want to be able to count them all.
yeah, we want to be able to count them. So if we put a cap that's lower, then it changes our whole density.
Okay, and same with Allen, what's that Allen?
Allen to Lincoln. Potentially, we could put a cap. I'd have to look at what the largest parcel would allow. But if, let's say the largest parcels allow 8 and we put a cap at 4, now that's gonna affect our density, overall density, and it will only cut off a few units, so.
And the
I
largest
think we're
parcel,
so
the
close.
largest parcel in the Allen to Lincoln is the gas station on the corner of Lincoln and Summer. Which is a spot where you could have reasonable density and not affect the overall neighborhood.
Yeah, but the question is, can we and keep the numbers? It's not,
Well, if we put a cap that would lower the density on that particular parcel, I think it doesn't improve the impact on the neighborhood having a cap, and it does reduce the density.
So you have to raise it elsewhere.
You would have to make something else denser, and that corner right there would make a reasonable
Condo.
condo development.
And it's limited to 2.5 stories. So it can't be a big apartment building.
with the parking, you can't obviously have a 0.5 parking spot. So we haven't come across this too much in our bylaws because we don't have a lot of larger developments that have, 25 units, and so you're gonna get a half parking spot.
The bylaw provides it has to be rounded up.
Oh, it does say
Yep,
rounded.
it says it's
Okay.
rounded up.
Does say
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
That was a question I had.
It does say that it requires that if you do 3 units, you have to have 5. So our numbers here are for the purposes of the model, but when we actually write the zoning, and I'll go through like the outline of the zoning, through the sample zoning, what we'll do is we'll refer to our existing parking requirements. So with the exception of the LCD, where we'll boost that up to 2 per.
There may be a problem with doing that, which is when whatever they are,
HLC.
reviews that, they're gonna say, we are requiring a higher number of parking spaces in this district than we do for the rest of the town. And that's not allowed.
Well, no, it is allowed if you have a reason.
If you have a reason.
Well, I mean, that's just, it's a potential.
Yeah, I mean, potentially if they kick it back,
We could say,
we
okay.
just don't say that, we just
Yeah.
move that little section and we just.
Yeah.
But
sorry.
can I ask why would you want to increase that number? It just encourages the development of properties that are more and more covered with cars. 1.5 is already pretty generous.
Well,
Well, the
I
cars
think-
have to go somewhere.
Yeah, I think the concern is that everybody living there is on the edge of town and will at least have one or two vehicles, so having you can't walk to the train station, you can't walk really anywhere. So that they may have a higher number of vehicles at that site.
Existing parking is one family is 2 spaces. 2 family is 3 spaces, 3 family is, so that's 1.5. 3 family is 5.
Right.
Yeah.
It's 1.5 per
And
unit,
1.5
rounded
per
up.
unit, rounded up, and the 4 family or more is 1.5 per unit, and it does say rounded up
Yeah.
already.
Yes, that was my point. I mean, the 1.5 is in compliance with what we're doing now, and just questioning. I agree, though, that the parking burden that would be placed on the core of the town by this large acreage is important. It's important that we account for it, but 1.5 is still a pretty good sized number for what would be relatively small units.
But we don't know how large the units will be.
Well, we know that when we're talking about these parcels downtown, they're not going to be very big because they're
I'm
pretty
talking
small
about
parcels.
LCD.
Oh, LCD. I'm sorry, and maybe I was completely off topic. I have no opinion on the LCD.
Okay, that's the only place where we have 2 cars per unit.
Okay, excuse me. I'm off track.
I think also we've heard over and over that people are concerned about on-street about units that don't have parking associated with them. And so I think that's
Yeah.
certainly something we've heard over and over.
And the LCD, anybody who lives in the LCD is going to be driving to everywhere.
Yes.
The only thing that might happen is it might be an elderly housing, in which case they would not need 2 spaces. But maybe we can,
Senior housing is specified as something less,
yeah,
but then. So senior housing is 1 for
It
each.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter because we're saying 2 parking units, 2 parking spaces per unit in the overlay district. We're not we're not going with,
You're not saying except for senior housing and you can
Right.
have less or something.
yeah, okay. Okay,
Ask about the age restricted. So with Newport Park and Summer Street, I believe Summer Street is age restricted. No, under housing authority, no.
Summer Street,
No.
Newport Park.
The 10-12 summer.
Newport Park is.
Summer
but
Street
the-
is affordable but not age restricted.
Okay. So how are those age restricted, low income at Newport Park protected? If a multifamily overlay goes over it,
By the owner. MHA requires,
there's a deed restriction on the
Yeah.
property.
right, okay, so no, so how do you put, so no multifamily can actually go on there?
Oh, sure, yeah, no, they could, the state would have to approve it, and it would be good if they did. To allow additional development there, as long as you don't reduce the number of senior units. That's what the deed restriction says. There are 32 age restricted units. So it would be possible to add another 10 non-restricted if the state approved it.
So that's my question, so we're protecting the 32 that are there. Those don't get touched.
Right.
A developer could add more age restricted. Or not.
Yeah.
And, okay, so I just wanted to make sure that those 32 were protected.
I mean, they might get rebuilt,
They-
right?
they
So
could,
they
yeah.
might get. The physical building might change, but the number of units.
Yeah, for example, the second floor walk-ups for seniors, I mean, that's not a good thing, so maybe a redevelopment plan says those 16 units get relocated to an elevator building, service building somewhere else on the site.
On the site.
But the important thing is that the 32 age-restricted units are, protected.
And then one other thing with the age restricted is that rereading the definition, it says, even if we do the 10% or the 20%, that affordable at 80% AMI, it's not guaranteed unless it specifically follows all of the EOHLC for SHI, that it gets on the SHI. So
Yes.
we would have to have wording that the 10%, 20% hopefully all has to be SHI compliant.
Yes, exactly.
And there's seem to be a loophole in that where you can say it needs to be age restricted. Needs to be affordable. But that doesn't automatically mean that SHI compliant.
We need to have it in our definition.
Be in our,
yes.
yes, we'll be in the zone, absolutely.
Getting on the SHI is slightly tougher than getting into the Somerset Club.
No, but it doesn't have to be honest, Mary, it doesn't have to be on the SHI. It has to be deed restricted. And that's the
Well, we want it on
prerequisite
the
to
SHI.
get it on the SHI. Yeah,
We
but
sure do.
no, but I'm just saying that affordable is deed restricted.
Yes,
Yeah.
but that doesn't make it SHI compliant so that it helps our
It
town
does if it's
members.
deed restricted and you follow all the other rules.
That's what I'm
We
saying.
have marketing,
It
third party
doesn't mean it has to
marketing.
be on the SHI.
It's
No,
hoop
but-
built.
Well, I'm just saying what the guideline definition says, unless it's all of that compliant, it's not qualified for the SHI and we want it to be on. the
Right.
Sure do.
Yes. Want to be qualified for the SHI.
We have.
So it's gonna have to go to the lottery, it's gonna have to do all of that.
All of that stuff.
Yeah.
But the developer's not responsible for getting it on the SHI, the town is.
Well,
Just
we
to
better
make it
have our
clear.
ducks in order because we didn't quite last time, so,
Correct.
Okay.
Kathy had a question.
Still waiting.
Could you clarify how the height is determined when the topography is very hilly? I remember a side conversation about that, and I just can't remember how that height is determined. Is it street level that you
No.
start measuring up? or
The
what is it?
average around the perimeter of the structure, pre-construction grade.
Okay, so in the collateral that you're gonna be presenting to people at the forum, do you have by lot, how high something could be in that lot? That will tell you on Pine Street where I live, it's a hill, right? And so in your lower sections, those homes, they're on the lower part of the hill. So we're trying to understand what is the tallest that they could be, where do you start measuring that 35 feet from?
Well, it's where the structure's gonna be. In reality, they're not gonna be building the structure on the hill. So therefore,
That's what I'm
it's-
asking.
It's the average around where the structure's gonna be, which should be on the low part.
but you would like to see visually.
I think that'll help because some of these areas that are in the districts, they are hilly and we wouldn't want to mislead anybody or have somebody assume something that isn't true.
I worry about our putting out a lot by lot picture
Well,
of
I
that.
understand, but I think you
Because we may assume that people would put it in the easy to build area and
Yeah.
somebody might decide that they want to put it elsewhere. And so we would have been misleading. And so I think the best we're going to be able to do is say that it's the average of the pre-construction grade around the footprint of the building.
So when you say around the footprint of the building, you're not going beyond the lot itself?
You're only at the structure. You're not going based
You
on the
take
lot.
proposed foundation wall,
Okay,
and that's the grade, the average of the grade of the foundation.
okay. So on a 6,000 square foot lot,
Mhm.
when you're measuring, figuring out that average, you're looking within that 6,000 square feet.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Thank you.
At the
Like you're
actual
looking at
structure.
I think that's just important to clarify for those of us who live on the ups and downs.
And it's within the, you know, you can't go out into the setback either. You can't count anything in the
It's where the
setback.
building is gonna go.
Yeah,
So there is a definition in zoning, I think it would be helpful
Okay.
to clear.
Sorry.
The height of the building is the vertical distance measured from the average grade of the existing ground level adjoining the building at each exterior wall to the highest point of roof.
we need a simpler explanation.
I know,
Yeah.
well, that's the one that's. That's the one that's
Out
in
there now,
zoning.
I'm gonna take a look at it.
But maybe we can simplify that.
That's why I say the average
So the
of the perimeter of the construction.
That's actually
All right,
pretty specific
yeah,
compared to how lots of many towns define it, so.
well, I'm glad you think that. It's a lot of time to get there.
This was just changed.
Wait, one more point, that, so I was looking at the model and then I created my own spreadsheet because I can't unlock the model, but anyway, there, and it might have changed, but if you add up the actual acres of the number of lots versus what the model says, there's a 1 acre difference because they're including streets. So it's important that residents know that the actual density will actually be more because, you know, if you, 1 acre is 15 units, so now those are gonna be spread out on the lots, they're not gonna be in the street. So I don't know exactly how that works out, I forget actually what district it's now, but I think it was
But this
Big
density,
percentage of the whole.
but so there was one district that had that 1 acre difference, so the,
So that goes across.
Yeah, it goes
Um,
across the street for long.
yeah, so just that the density will be more than what people are visualizing because of that extra full acre that was the road, which seems awfully high to me, but that's what the model says.
and that's included in these calculations.
Yeah, but it seemed to do it in one district and not the other district, county road, so I don't know. And I would also say, talk to Mark about this, is that I'm not exactly sure where the state gets their lot sizes, because it doesn't match up to our Access GIS for Patriots properties. So, and again, there, it could be a whole acre off, so. For example, Beaver, the warehouse property in our GIS is actually 6.8, not 7.6. So in reality, if somebody were to go and build, even though there's a cap at 100 now, the density will seem more because there's less space to work. So, and again, you know, if it's the states verifying their state numbers, which again, I don't know where they get them. Hopefully they can't come back to us and say, you gave us these numbers, but the real numbers are this from your Access GIS, so now you're not.
But
No,
we're using their
we're
model,
using their model.
so.
No, I know, but their model did some made up numbers that I don't know where they get.
I don't know, are our numbers made up or are their numbers made up? I wouldn't want to guarantee either one.
Well, ours are the ones that are collecting taxes, so I hope ours, I don't know.
Pass those out. Pass the cookies around.
Talking
Talking about the model.
You've already had one.
I know, I'm gonna have to.
They came from a memorial service. so we wrote that.
Okay.
I've already had 3, no, take it away.
No.
Can I just I'm just gonna, I think everybody in this room knows each other, except perhaps people don't know Gordon Brewster. Gordon, is the person who has submitted his application for joining the planning board, so appreciate your interest in the planning board. And, hopefully,
Got a call from Sarah to walk into the parking lot. Millington ski area after David Warren. Say, would I be interested?
Great, so. I think at the end, everybody can introduce themselves.
Having been part of the construction at the elementary school and the high school, oh, you are signing up for more.
Signing up also on the next one.
Yeah, 6 elementary.
Oh, gosh.
I was button for punch. Okay, Mark, and you,
So the only thing is, this is, what's up on the screen now is the, outline or the table of contents of the sample zoning that they provide, the EOHLC provides. So our zoning, that on the right says it's kind of generally follows this format, but it'll, so there'll be a purpose, and establishment of the districts and how they apply. There'll be some new definitions, but what we will do is we will move the definitions into the regular definition section of our bylaw. So, because everything was consolidated when we did the codification. There'll be the permitted uses, but primarily that'll define for each of those districts, the densities that will be allowed. The dimensional standards, which will be the setbacks for each of the districts, the height limits, building caps, etc. The off-street parking, again, we'll probably look at referring to the existing parking requirements in the zoning, with the exception of a reference to the LCD district.
Again, I would suggest we don't want to refer to the existing zone. We want this to be separate because we don't want to be precluded from making changes to the existing zone.
But it would be helpful if she uses exactly the same format,
Same language.
same language,
Yeah.
same format, so that there's consistency, but I think, and then if she can use tables to the extent, try to get away from lengthy narratives.
Okay. And then there's general development standards. It says here optional. That's basically similar to what they have in their sample zoning performance standards, which is what you have already under site plan review. So we will compare the two and then maybe add where necessary for development in the overlay districts. Affordability requirements, this is where you put in the requirement for 10 or 20% affordable and the things that they have to do. Site plan review, we will require that they do have to go to site plan review.
Site plan review regardless, even for a conversion of a 2-family to a 3-family.
No, because that's in the underlying
I would
zone.
suggest that.
I don't think,
Okay, two to 3 is in the general district, but let's imagine that we're on Pine
Okay.
Street.
yeah, no, I think we should not have site plan review across.
Right, I would agree.
It's
That's
overbearing.
below.
There's no way the planning board can deal with that. And
Generally, it's fairly simple considering you're going extra unit. If you can assure the public that everything that's gets built into this overlay district has a level of review, I think the public will be a little more assured that someone's
it's their
looking.
house.
Well, to your point, Sarah, if they're doing from 2 to 3 in the G, they go with our current zoning, they don't do it based on the MBTA.
But like
ordinance.
Ann is saying, Pine Street is not general. Underlined.
Well, they'd have to do it through the overlay bylaw, and so then.
Yeah, but why, if they go from 2 to 3 in the existing structure, do you want different rules? I mean, it just makes no sense.
Well, if it's the existing structure with no exterior changes, it seems the site plan review would be,
would be pretty simple.
but it could be sort of Personally, I think that the public will be much more comfortable with this and we have so many things that vary across the districts. To the extent that we can reduce those or minimize those. That could be removed at some future date.
Yes.
But I think for the purposes of
Getting this
getting this
passed.
passed and having people comfortable with it, having site plan review for anybody who's exercising their
New rights
new
under
right
this.
under this has to go through site plan review. Just
Where's,
every
where's-
Monday.
where does the architectural, the design guidelines go?
That's where we're going.
Right there.
In site plan, review,
Okay.
being amended to the site plan.
A lot of people, really wanna have, design guidelines.
But that would only be in this zoning, it wouldn't be in the underlying zones.
That's correct. It would just be as it applies to the
Right.
multifamily under the overlay districts.
So
Sure.
I know that we're gonna talk about design guidelines, I think later, but in terms of where they go in the zoning, at one point Emily said that those could be outside of zoning and adopted as regulations. Is that, first of all, is that true? Regulations of the planning board?
The problem you have, Sarah, is if certain things are within the zoning, it's mandatory.
I understand.
If they're outside of the zoning, it's
I get it.
completely voluntary, so if
I
there's
think the-
important things,
Right.
you want it in the zoning so that people feel comfortable that they'll be
I
enforced.
think that I'm all for the requirement for site plan review. The question is the criteria under which site plan review takes place. Should that be in zoning or can that be in regulations? And the reason I would like to suggest that we at least consider it to be in regulations is that it's a whole lot easier to adopt it or to change it.
That's the
And-
problem.
And that's
That's exactly the problem.
Yep.
People are not going to be happy if they see that the planning board can make arbitrary changes to the design.
hearing and all that,
Yeah.
but
Yep, this
Okay.
is,
but on the flip side of it,
as you said before, we can change it later.
true, yeah, I guess my argument would be that it's easier to change it, it's even easier to strengthen it as well as weaken it, so.
But if it's a hot button with people,
Yeah,
you
okay,
wanna make it more difficult to change,
okay, that's
it's
fine,
my opinion.
that's fine.
Can somebody clarify, and we can change it later? I starting to get the impression that we're gonna try to pass MBTA overlay zoning and then change things later, so.
She's saying if it's in the regulations.
Well, I think that you
Yeah,
can always
anything to
amend
change.
zoning, I think that's the.
What do you mean
This,
by
this,
change it?
this. The question about design review and whether it's a regulation or a part of the zoning law doesn't really affect our certification as complying with 48(3)(a). This is something that we're doing to protect the town. And to convince the people in town that it's, the particular case that I was talking about was a conversion of a 2-family to a 3-family. When the town is comfortable with the fact that things are being built willingly, slowly, I hope they will be. And that the planning board isn't overwhelmed, we could come back to the town and say, because the design regulations are complicated, we'd like to make it a regulation so that it can be adjusted to reflect current tastes or whatever. That's not going to change our compliance. But we adopt something that's more strict, and then if it seems appropriate, we go back to the town and say, this is really strict and we're having trouble enforcing it or whatever. Town, are you willing to change that? So it's not that we're going to change something in a committee. It's if our experience is that this is more strict than is necessary, we can come back.
After you've asked the state if we can do it.
No.
Since it's in the overlay bylaw, you have to get permission from the state
No,
first.
the site plan review, it won't be in the overlay district. So,
Oh, I thought you said the
That's
site plan
part of the
would be in the overlay.
It'll be in site plan review that
what the overlay district is gonna say,
Right.
the overlay district is gonna say site plan review by the planning board. The site plan review process is laid out in the rest of the.
But the
the zoning.
design review has to be only under the overlay.
So that,
And in the
Which
site,
is part of
there'll be
site
an
plan
amendment.
review.
Yeah, there'll be an amendment to the site plan review regs, which will be part of the package, which will say, we're following design guidelines and we're following multifamily zoning overlay districts shall be, followed.
Which makes it unenforceable, whereas if it's in the zoning, it's
That would be-
enforceable.
Yes, that would be in the zoning section, site plan.
No, it's gotta be in the overlay district zone.
I agree with you.
so let's,
We don't have to.
tell you what, we're not
now.
gonna decide that
Yeah,
now,
okay.
let's get this thing drafted and look at it then.
Okay. And then the last thing is severability, which we have a severability clause already for the entire zone package, so. Include that. And that's the basic outline that we'll see next week from Emily.
So she's actually writing up some
She's writing out
bylaw.
the overlay district regs. She's gonna be looking at some of our other regulations, so if something requires a special permit, it has to get amended for this overlay district, so it's not required to have a special permit, because you can't have special permits for anything in these districts.
Well, say that again.
So for example, you have to check the rest of your zoning to make sure there's nothing that requires a special permit in the overlay districts. So even though your overlay district regulations won't require a special permit, is there something else in the bylaw that might require a special permit for the development of
The
a particular
existing bylaw.
parcel? Yeah, the existing
Yeah, so
bylaw,
a few of these districts are in the water overlay.
right, and if that requires, let's say, a special permit to go over a certain lot percentage, it has to be exempted, so we have to adopt something as part of this package to remove that special permit requirement in the overlay district. So, for example, if
That's a
we,
big one.
No, I don't think it's that many parcels.
It's the LCD. It's, Allen to Lincoln. And it might be part of the Beach Street or C Street, I forget which one.
I don't think it's.
no, the Allen to
So-
Lincoln is in the, great,
It's in the water protection overlay district, so that you can't do more than 2,500 square feet impervious or some such thing. That needs a special permit from the planning board.
so that would have to be eliminated for the overlay district.
That's our water protection district.
But then can you bring the requirement for that up to the overlay district, so that it's like a dimensional requirement?
Well,
So
then
it's
you'd
not,
have
it's
to-
not
you'd have to
done
look
through
at-
a special permit, but it's just done through a standard.
You have to look at the model, so that if you requires 6,000.
So if you have a 6,000 square feet lot and you have 40% coverage by structure, that leaves 3,600 not covered by structure.
So I thought that the underlying zoning like that was still remaining because it was not,
It is.
You can't have any special permit process. there.
It's underlying zoning is remaining if you choose to not function under the overlay district.
The overlay is just by right, so it means, so if you have a water protection or,
But what I'm saying is I think that the coverage requirements are strict enough that you're not gonna have an issue.
Yeah, I'm also wondering whether even under the MBTA zoning, that environmental
Right.
protection
Right.
is
Still
not waived.
Right,
I
right,
wouldn't
because
say
we've been
that.
saying the
And
Concom
I'm-
rules are
Right.
that.
So,
Yeah, but that's different, that's a different
That's
thing.
different.
The Concom does not have special
Authority.
permits.
oh, they don't.
They have other things that they do even instead.
But the environmental law is still sustained,
Yes.
Right.
So I don't know how that works in an overlay district. I don't think having an overlay district means you don't have to follow environmental regulations.
Right, but I think the
It's-
water resources overlay is a zoning bylaw. So that's
So
different.
I read probably 30 towns, their response from EOHLC, and a lot of them get kicked back for that. If you need the water protection district or some other special permit district.
But I think we have to look at and see, are we really impacting?
But it will,
Because we won't have non-conforming lots. Have the minimum lot size and the maximum coverage, which will protect us, whereas today we have non-conforming lots where it can be much higher.
You have that bylaw, all that.
I see what you're saying, Sarah.
So we can't answer this tonight, we're gonna have to go look at every.
yeah, well, we'll see what Emily comes up with. I know that says the overlay district can have another section of bylaw requires change it to accept property tax. So
So the question then is, how many properties within the overlay district have underlying zoning that would require special? That, my understanding.
Yeah, or the thing we could try and see is what's the difference between what like is required, let's say in the water resource district for lot coverage versus what we're requiring in this overlay
Right.
district, is that difference?
Negligible.
Yeah, I mean, if it's 10%, it's so those 10 or 15 parcels, you know, get a benefit of an exemption. You can go get a special permit in order to get.
And and if they're gonna be subject to site plan review, then
I would think that'd be a hard sell waiving our water resource
I
protection.
think, again, I think it depends, are we really waiving it? Or are we restricting the coverage enough in the overlay zoning that it's not gonna be an impact?
right, because the
Well-
the issue is you can't render impervious more than 15% impervious of any lot without an artificial recharge. You need a special permit for that, so that you could exempt the special permit, but still require, then the underlying zoning of the 15% can still kick in. You just, the issue is you can't require a special permit for it.
Right.
So you wouldn't be exempting the compliance, you'd just be exempting the special permit requirement. Right. So those are two different things.
Yeah.
So the building inspector would say, oh, you weren't complying, but you wouldn't have to have a special permit. Right?
Well, it's not that easy.
I know, but
But that's our bylaw, so you'd have to change the bylaw for that.
we're exempted in the overlay.
I mean, we don't even know at this point how many properties are affected. 1 acre or something tiny or nothing or big problems. Maybe we should hang on until we know.
We'll see what she ends up.
Okay. Any other questions about zoning language? So let's move on to the design guidelines. So there's been a copy of what the architects have proposed circulating around. And there is also the MAPC language for the LCDs floating around. I haven't heard a lot of comments from anybody on any of this.
That's because they're just floating around.
So how do we get from floating around to get coming up with a real draft?
Well, I mean, I have some comments, but
I think a lot of us have been very much focused on what we need to present, have the planning board approve. And what we need, and the select board approve, and what we need to get to the state in June.
Yeah.
And I can speak for myself, the design guidelines didn't seem to be in that group, and
well, I mean, we were pretty close, were we not? For the design guidelines. I thought we talked about, discussed them, and what the guys came and talked to us and walked us through.
We haven't had detailed discussions. But I think that maybe before next week, if people could look at them and say, are there any pieces of it that they want in the zoning itself?
So,
Which would deal with that, and then
Mhm.
which components should be in the regulations. So we can get the zoning done.
so the design guidelines, which would be applicable for all the districts except for the LCD, are closer to a guideline that you would adopt as part of part of zone. It's more specific. I mean, some of the language needs to get adjusted a little bit, changed to be more regulatory. But you know, there's some clear requirements here, you know, like, for example, here, building entry should be clearly expressed. With by design elements and roof overhang, porch, portico. So that's a very specific thing. And so those are the things that you know, would be that you can evaluate a proposal against, right? So
Yeah.
that's what makes it kind of a regulatory document. So this is pretty good. It needs some adjustments. It's not everything in here is like that, but it's
Mark, I was
You-
hoping we were going to get some feedback from Emily as to which of these regulations, in her opinion, will get past EOHLC as regulatory entries.
mhm.
Because there is always that question that we may be guessing what they're willing to accept as a regulatory, but she probably has a better idea than we do.
Is it the MAPC one that you're set up?
No.
No, this is our.
That's for downtown. That's within the.
Oh, it's different than what you sent us. Oh, this is for Beaver Dam.
Yeah, Beaver Dam is.
Okay.
I read them, I thought they were pretty good.
Mhm. Yeah, the one for downtown is, you know, they talk about different elements of buildings and.
But do we have anything in there
There's quite a bit.
for multi-use, which we need for Elm Street?
There is a little bit, yep.
There's quite a bit, there's a fair amount of detail. in
Yeah.
it. I mean, my only complaint about the LCD really is it reminds me of the first draft of the guidelines for downtown where it had no images. You know, so you really had no idea what they were talking about exactly. And as soon as they added images to the
When did we
guidelines
get
for
the
downtown,
LCD?
it made a big difference.
Will we get pictures for the LCD?
There are,
No,
there
we
are.
don't.
Well, here,
I didn't.
When did we get the guidelines for the LCD?
A month ago.
While ago.
I put it on just so the planning board members, know. I put what looks to be an old
March,
version
beginning of
in the
April, I think.
meeting packet. but-
Sometimes I'm left off.
so the LCD,
That's which distribution list it is.
No, the LCD has not been forwarded from me to anyone
Thank you.
because I do not have it.
I don't know how I got it. I went to the meeting maybe.
so the LCD guidelines, those really not necessarily in a regulatory format. It just talks about tolls, about pedestrian experience, connectivity. Pedestrian experiences, a lot on that. We're talking about a bunch of,
Yeah.
we're talking about a dense development on 7 acres. So all of this discussion is integration with nature and sustainability principles. And
It's excerpted from something, right?
I have no idea. They're talking about native species and wildlife, and you're talking about a site that's already 100% altered. And, yeah, exactly. So
No nature.
Teachers
It's doing-
long ago.
so when
They've
we,
just been forced to restore some of the wetlands with the most recent
Mhm.
building they're adding.
So now when they get down to page 7, they do talk about building. But again, it's kind of all over the place. They talk about multiple styles of topography, typologies. But then they show pictures of larger buildings that we talked about may be desirable to have because they'd be elevated buildings to allow for seniors or people with disabilities to be able to navigate. And if you're gonna be able, if you're gonna be putting 100 units roughly on 7 acres, you're gonna need large, dense buildings. So and you're not gonna be able to get any sort of density with the buildings on the bottom row here, or even some of the ones in the middle.
But the goal here is to give some direction to a developer who might elect to build 30 units there instead of 100. So our goal here is not to, it's just to create a vision. And I don't think it's a problem to give the townhouse visual, because it might help people who come in thinking they want to build a big box to think, well, maybe a townhouse that's more expensive for some of 20% affordable is a good path. So I don't think we have to have design guidelines that steer you to the maximum density. But I agree that the Beaver Dam district is very subjective at this moment.
And that's gonna be,
Could we start by doing the guidelines for all the other 3 districts? Perhaps, and
And maybe Gail can forward this to everyone.
yeah,
the Beaver Dam.
actually, Gail, can you fire them both at the
Yeah,
same
that's
time? That would be helpful, and we.
I can as soon as I receive them. I've forwarded everyone the design guidelines and they've been part of your meeting packets. They've been included as a link in the meeting minutes, but I will forward both of them as soon as I get the design guidelines for the LCD.
okay.
I put, they're in our meeting, they're in the planning board meeting packet for today.
They're not in for the rest of us.
What planning board meeting packet?
I didn't see them.
I just put it up today, so
Well,
I was trying to invite email.
All right, and then the,
So just one point of logistics. So GAR has no, and Sandy, they have no access to SharePoint.
Right, so
No.
that's.
Neither do I.
Yeah,
Nor do I.
task
I don't
force,
know.
the
Oh,
task
and
force
Sarah
has,
too.
we have to have 2 communications
Right,
paths, one
right.
for planning board and one for the task force.
And then
That's-
all of these
the
things,
task force cannot have SharePoint
Right.
because they do not have emails that are town email addresses.
Well, some of us.
Some of us do.
Yes, but
I don't want one.
several do not.
Fine. Treat us as second class citizens. I don't care.
Um,
okay,
so
so,
Oh,
Okay, so
yes.
So question, design guidelines. So our current zoning bylaw does not contain zoning guidelines, correct?
Sounds
Design.
Correct.
Design
Well,
guidelines, yes.
But,
not quite true, but
but, so if we enact design guidelines with our MBTA zoning overlay districts, is that going to be acceptable to HLC since we don't have them for anything else?
Good question. Well, my feeling on the design guidelines, and I may be wrong on this, was it's great to have design guidelines, but if somebody comes in and they're building an as of right in an overlay district, according to the plans, but they don't quite comport with the design guidelines, I don't think the planning board, this is me, can say, sorry, no building permit. I don't think they can do it. They're just guidelines.
Unless you have specific things in the bylaw.
Okay.
Then
So
it's
I
different.
think with
Yeah.
And
the,
that's what we're trying to do.
I
Yeah,
think
this is
with-
the point I was trying to make earlier. Some portion of those design guidelines, I believe, can be placed into the zoning requirements, and that's why it's important to get some feedback from Emily on this.
To your point, Gar, though, I think that many planners have said across the years, not just on this, that when you give designers guidelines, they want to work with the town and they often will do their best to comply with
Yes.
guide, even if they're just a
Okay.
a guideline or even a conversation.
And that's our experience.
And then,
We build-
so,
We try to comport, follow the zoning, the
right,
design guidelines. We try to, even though we know they're not gonna turn us down if we don't do it, we still try to do
so
it.
it's sort of an intentional
Yeah.
thing, and so if we succeed in 80% of the applications to steer them toward a particular
Mhm.
exterior material or whatever, or away from a particular,
Aesthetic.
highly modern, aesthetic,
Yeah.
whatever it is, then that's the goal, the realistic goal.
so going back to Sue's question. So in the site plan review section of the zoning bylaw that is in place now, there are a number of performance standards that the planning board is supposed to use in reviewing a site plan. And in fact, there are a couple of architectural references in the performance standards, but they're very brief. And so what this is doing is saying, I guess, in addition to those very brief ones, we have this much more detailed thing. And the other question I have for everyone is, we've been talking a lot about a design review board. And the design review board would be a group of design professionals who are residents of the town, who could advise the planning board in reviewing the design guideline or reviewing the project to make sure it complies with the design guidelines. The question is, do we formalize that? Or do we just simply say the planning board may convene an informal group of advisors to help them review these plans?
I would formalize it.
I think we have to be careful with that because it's clear from HLC that you can't have there can't be anyone who can stop a project. Like they can't have any authority to do that. So
Sure.
if we're going to have them and have them formalized,
It's not a recommendation though.
It's an advisory,
Yeah,
in an advisory capacity, I'm sure.
the recommendation to the planning board. I think if you don't formalize it, then it's not gonna happen. And you can't go out to the public and say, we're gonna have these design review guidelines, because I'm not convinced that I don't know if you have now or that planning board's always gonna have people who are experts in architecture in order to do that review internally. So I think by, formalizing it, then the public knows it's gonna happen and they're just making a recommendation. And clearly it's to work with the developer and you can't deny it if it's just in regulations.
Yes, Mary.
I would say that the planning board is more than capable of doing it as part of a site plan review. These are very basic. I don't think you need architects to look at these. And I think if you do one more step, one more committee, one more group, that does make it more onerous and to a different level than what we do currently. So I would just keep it all one meeting with the planning board. Have the document. I don't think it's a big deal.
But I think it is because you can't, a developer, an architect-based design review board can talk to the developer's architect and probably get greater changes than the planning board would be able to elicit.
I don't know that there's gonna be a lot of back and forth because again, then I don't think the planning board is gonna have multiple meetings on one.
Nay.
So my experience, I've never worked with a design review board, but most towns I've been in has adopted some basic design standards as well as other performance standards under site plan review. So my experience is that, again, it depends on the personnel of the planning board and how receptive the developer is, but generally they are successful in having major changes occur to plans and buildings based on what their standards are. But you don't necessarily get sometimes, as if you had architects, some of the much finer details, which you may, in most of the towns I've worked in before, they didn't really want to drill down into the exact design of the window frames, but as long as they were framed and as individual windows, as opposed to just a big plate glass thing, they were reasonably satisfied. Broken up a certain way, and they didn't want to drill down into those commission details like a historic commission reviewing historic buildings. So the question is really is what level of detail do you want to feel comfortable going down, or do you feel that the planning board is can sufficiently review these things without architectural review to subcommittees and
So I have worked with design review boards, and what I found is that design guidelines probably will prevent bad design, or at least mitigate bad design. But a design review board might foster a great design, a much better design than what a developer might consider. And I don't know how the town feels about that, whether another layer of review is worth some better buildings. That's an interesting question.
I'm wondering if for the purposes of MBTA zoning, which is what we're trying to get to, we might fairly simply reference that these by right projects must go to site plan review. Perhaps that's all we say for now. That might be layer one, and then perhaps we layer in a simple statement in our site plan review, which applies across all projects. That is particularly focused on the downtown, and I'm not sure how we think about the LCD, at least, that has some of those key parameters. And then in terms of, I agree with Mary that the planning board should do it, at least at this juncture. And I can sort of envision that the planning board might have two friends of the board who are architects who we call in to give public comment in that process as we develop it, and that we don't have to design review another layer, but that we can be thoughtful and have some of the members who have helped develop the guidelines when we have them, when we know something's coming, we say, would you like to take a look at this and give us some comments? At least to start, and that it's kind of a little bit more advisory to the board. If you get some architecture review in that way, at least. And it's kind of in a scale that is consistent with with what we're doing now. And the other thing is that one member of the design guidelines committee gave us a lot of design review on the high school. And like to the like trace on the plans. So architects like to do that, and we all like to, we like to give advice to whoever's our colleagues in our profession, right? So it can kind of go too much, I think. So I think that there's a way to introduce this, to have the first layer is those multifamily by right properties are subject to site plan review. If we only do that, and then to amend site plan review to add some of the design guidelines as they've been presented in a regulatory way is a compendium. And then that is something we can revise and strengthen or weaken or.
My concern is that I think people in town will be happier, they're very happy about the zoning changes if they think that there is actually design review as part of it.
I'd like to,
People are looking at the design review as a kind of control, an
Backstop.
aesthetic control.
Character of the downtown.
Yeah.
And I think particularly in Newport Park and Powder House, where they can go to 4 stories.
Yes.
I think the thing here is that
One half
we know we
We
don't know exactly where this zoning change is going to take us, but we do know that there are properties very visible in our downtown and a large number of acres in our core downtown. And if you look at some of the larger parcels, like the one on the corner of Summer and Beach, or along Summer Street as you go out of town, we have the potential here to see some fairly significant visual changes to our downtown. I just hope and argue for us going as far as we can to provide protection for what right now we cannot clearly envision as the final result. We just don't know how fast or how slow or how or what direction will be taken with the zoning that we're going to be doing.
Yep.
You've got some big parcels that could have some big developments, and it's going to take some real feistiness to encourage developers to go the direction we want to go.
Do you think,
I can imagine, I think we can all imagine something getting built that we would not be happy with.
well, do you
as a
think
town?
Sarah's suggestion that the planning board has site plan review, that would be adequate to allay people's concerns about somebody taking down Seabreeze Variety and hiring Frank Gehry to design something to go on there?
I'm not sure that I'm such a good judge of what people's attitudes will be, but I would say that I would rather have some architects convened in a formal structure to be able to communicate with architects during the design process. I'd rather have lawyers talking to lawyers, and I'd rather have architects talking to architects. I think.
But we gotta, this has to fly through the EOHLC too, right?
Well, yes, that's why I keep saying that I think it's important that whatever we do, we get some feedback from Emily on this. But clearly, it is possible under EOHLC to have a formalized review process, and
We'll have a proposal for Monday, or I mean, for Tuesday in your package, whether we'll see whether she thinks it'll go through EOHLC with a whether it's a subcommittee of the planning board architecture, maybe with one planning board member, and a couple local design professionals or school term or something like that. As part of it, put a very simple structure to it. Maybe it'll fly, or maybe she'll just say, look, yeah.
Okay, right.
Kind of try and go in between a real super formal thing and just let the thing be a tool. So,
May I offer opinion? Can I speak?
Sure, of course.
So having spent 35 years in an architectural engineering business representing real estate developers all over everywhere. Starting as a real estate developer, working and then working as an architect as the project manager for. We did, when we moved into a new community, we were planning on building whatever we were planning on building as a representative for the owner here. We often welcomed exactly what Sarah just said, and actually what Gar just said too. Meeting with the architectural representatives of the community to have a better understanding of what they would accept and like to see as the architectural features, finishes, materials, besides the zoning, the height, the FAR and all the other stuff like that. So I would suggest that you do exactly what Sarah said. I know those people that we went to early on to discuss it with here. And actually we did it with the high school. We did it with the elementary school too. And we had our own design review committee within the town that worked with the architect to come up with what we felt was a fair representation of the building configuration and stuff. So I would be a strong advocate for having a formal design review committee, not burdensome, not that would slow down the activity and see it as a stopping point, but as some point as a point of communication between architect to architect. That would be very helpful.
Thank you. Okay, on that note, I'd like to move on to, I think, the most important topic of the meeting, which is to go ahead with the study to allow for 20% affordability. And I think you all got a copy of the proposal. Nope.
Oh, long ago, it's from February.
But Gail resent it.
It's retest-
Gail just resent it this week.
And I think she had to resend it
Oh, okay.
by Gmail.
I'm not on Gmail.
I've got it and couldn't expand the PDFs in it.
Well,
I think the software disconnected.
Put it up on the screen.
No.
This
There's
is-
a lot of gobbledygook.
This is a proposal from the firm to do a feasibility study.
Yes. It would allow us to get to 20% of the
Yeah.
guide.
So I'm perfectly willing to yield to the judgment of those who have actually read it.
I would like a copy of it, though. I get very frustrated when different people are receiving different pieces of information. Just it makes it very difficult.
Yeah, it's not very long.
It's also dated, I mean, Gail did it recently, but you probably got it back in February, which is when we originally.
Sort of much of it.
I'm
is-
sorry, but I couldn't find something from February if I tried. If we're gonna discuss something, I expect to get something contemporaneously, not from February. Unless somebody gives me the date of a February email.
well,
I propose.
Chris, isn't this almost moot? I mean, if we want to have 20%, we've got to get this study. Isn't that the case?
I propose, subject to further input from other members of the committee, that we move ahead with it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What's the timeline for delivery?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It was very quick.
yeah, it's 2 weeks.
It's like a week and a half or something, so they're obviously cranking out.
This is RKG.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's boilerplate, with a
Yeah.
little bit of
Yeah.
eyewash on top.
A different front
Yep.
page.
Yes. Here's the
Your
scope
town
of
name here.
services.
Since this was in February, they say we could begin work starting March 4th and complete all analyses and reports for the town by March 22nd. So that's,
So basically a little bit less than 3
But
weeks.
is it the same now?
I don't know, that's a very good
I
question.
know that they are. busy right now.
And it,
It was,
No,
lump sum was 15,000, but
Yeah.
but we've already engaged for some of it, right?
no,
No.
no.
So this is $15,000.
Mhm.
And Mark, what budget would this come out of the planning
This
board?
would come out of the planning board budget, this would. We take it out of, we have a line item for zoning improvements of, that has $14,901 left, and then there was a balance of $712 from the zoning law rewrite. These were carried forward.
And that's from this fiscal year.
Were carried forward, it says here on this from
And there's
previous.
20,000 in the fiscal year 25
Right.
budget.
So, that really-
So I think this is a vote of the planning board, to vote to authorize the town to enter into a agreement with RKGA Associates for a feasibility study for the amount of $15,000. And to authorize the planner to negotiate a new schedule of work that complies with our timeframe. And to fund it from the planning board remaining funds in this fiscal year, basically. So can I
Is
make that motion?
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Okay, anybody second?
Second,
Okay, discussion. Discussion.
I wish there were alternatives. That's my only.
Alternatives, that she would give us
Right, that this was, that RKG is not our only alternative, but since they are our only alternative and we need it done, I
Yeah.
think we should do it.
I
Yeah.
thought RKG was part of the contract with them.
They
They
are.
They are.
I would agree with that, and does this not have to go out to bid? I mean, are we circumventing a contract here?
How sure, but
It was part of her original
Oh,
proposal,
it was?
Mhm.
Oh,
but it was an add-on. to the
Yeah.
original proposal.
And it was funded, the proposal was funded with a state grant.
the work that we've already done, yeah, the
Yeah.
other, the balance.
Emily's work.
The whole package was supposed to be under a grant, including RKG.
Well, that was only $50,000, our grant.
Yeah.
Right, and I think we.
I think
No.
we've
No?
gone
Okay.
beyond that, but we're, I believe it's right here. No. Oh, yeah,
Put you on the spot on the
yeah.
financing.
Well, he's looking that up, but I think
Yeah.
it was part of, it was an alternate in her initial proposal,
Yeah.
and she was selected through a competitive process, then
Mhm.
the given that I've taken the attorney general's training on that, I think. that-
Okay.
I think it was an add-on, it wasn't the original proposal, so I don't know all the ins and outs, I agree with Sarah that it was supposed to be all-inclusive aid, and then there's a big chunk that's not, so now we're 15,000, which seems
My,
pretty good.
my understanding was that the feasibility study was always a separate add-on.
Mine too.
Okay.
And that could be, but I think that it was supposed to have, some economic analysis done with the original contract.
That's true. Economic analysis, I think, is different.
So that doesn't even, 15,000 doesn't even include that.
No, this is just for the affordability portion, right?
Yes.
Yeah, takes a week.
So
And
give
just
it-
because are putting in 20%
Right.
in our plan.
Right.
The only thing I would do if I were doing this for me is I go back to RKG and say, I tell you what, we'd like to go ahead, we're gonna pay you $8,000. That's it. That's what I do, but that's me.
Well, we can certainly ask our planner to do that.
We can.
No.
You can always ask.
Long hours working the
Okay.
Bible.
Any other discussion? Roll call, Chris,
Yes,
Sue,
Yes.
Mary? And I vote yes, okay. So
The-
passes. You get that, Gail, it was 3 yes, 1 abstain.
The other thing is, I believe there's more grant money.
Right.
If we apply for it.
Yes, there is.
Well,
So for some of the other studies, Mass Housing Partnership has made funding available for this kind of work. So I was talking to Emily and she said that they may be opening up another rounds shortly. So,
Do you have Sue Croft in the loop?
well, not yet, I just spoke to them yesterday. So,
But I would have Sue Croft in
Yes.
the loop so she can pursue it.
mhm,
Because she's good at that.
yes.
Okay, okay, just a quick report from Ms. Kilbrick on the communications.
Sure, so since we met last, we updated and revised our FAQ document. We had it available at town meeting and we received great feedback on it. We're reading it. And we also edited the forum and actually discussed it a bit at the forum. It's on the MBTA page in the website, if you want to take a look at it. The forum was on Saturday, the 27th. Attendance was light, but it was a well-informed attendance for the most part, good input and questions. Chris, Emily, Mark presented. We had breakout tables for each district, slides, density chart, district maps, which Mark has discussed. Feedback. Concerned that we pass this and then the state imposes additional housing requirements in the future. Confusion about the size of possible units. Several residents came who live in the C Street, Tappan Street area, and they're concerned about the larger parcels and how many units they would be able to hold under the new overlay district. They were concerned about the history they've had with the owner of the storage property. They brought up the fact that they think there's a stream running under the storage property. They're concerned about the number of stories in their sub-district, but seemed happy with the 2.5. Were concerned about getting notification of butters if the owner of that particular property applies to develop the property under the overlay district, and they're concerned about parking. There was conversation about the old cricket building and why we're not including that. I think that was answered to people's satisfaction. Other comments, the line that we have been hearing, general objection to the state coming in and telling our quaint community what to do. We also got compliments, even from people who are probably not going to support the MBTA zoning. They complimented the task force for the quality and professionalism of our work. And they really appreciate the product that we have come up with. Still, some won't support us, but that's okay. At least they won't be throwing fireballs at town meeting.
Maybe not.
Remember what you said back? Our next forum, May 23rd. I think Chris already talked about this. The idea is a virtual before the joint planning board or as part of the joint planning board task force meeting. Additional public information, education sessions in the summer, we will plan after we have submitted to HLC and the Attorney General's office. Next question of the week in the cricket will be a combination of the FAQs number 26 and 27. What's an overlay district? That's it. And then our next subcommittee meeting is Thursday, the 16th at 10:15 a.m. All are welcome.
Excellent.
Gail, you didn't hand up?
Yes, I did. The feasibility study proposal was forwarded to both the planning board and the MBTA task force Tuesday at 2:26 PM. I just wanted to confirm that it was forwarded.
Thank you, Gail.
Thank
Yes.
you.
It's a question for Anne, I got Kathy's left, but Anne, we were thinking, I think I was only at the communications meeting for part of it, but there was a thought that on the 23rd public forum, that it might be strategic to encourage or even have a joint with the select board. Because then the select board comes on board, comes up to speed at the same time, here's the questions, and then it will expedite or negate a lengthy presentation at a select board meeting, or, you know, shorten what we do at a select board meeting. Okay. Does that?
Doesn't much, sorry. Doesn't matter to me, I'm gonna be here anyway.
Well,
I think that's a good idea.
Well, it just seems like it,
I'm just worrying about,
It's 2 days after the election.
it's, but, yeah, that's okay, we can get a new board member sworn in, I think.
Okay.
well, I think that was sort of also the
They have to
intent.
take the ethics thing this year.
They have to take the ethics thing
This,
before.
we didn't do it last year. Yeah, you have to do the ethics before you can be sworn in.
Wow.
And it's every other year, and we didn't do it last year, so it's gotta be this year.
Okay, so anyway, that's a technicality, but they can come,
Okay,
they can, certainly, anybody can come, and,
do we all have to take it before?
I believe so.
okay, so,
If your appointment, if you're being reappointed, if you're in an existing, if you're in
Okay,
an
so-
existing term, you have more time.
so I'll extend an invitation, Chris and I will extend an invitation to the select board. And the thought was also it's after the election, so new members, after they appoint, can come up to speed.
Well, so new member can certainly join us even if he hasn't
They
taken.
just
Right,
want
right.
to vote, yeah.
Right. So there's no voting to be done on the 23rd, but we'll encourage. So
Oh, yes, but
we can talk about that.
somebody had better tell Debbie,
Okay. You will,
and probably Craig.
Who am I correct now?
oh, because does she have to be there?
If,
I don't, we can talk about it, we can,
Well, you have to file, it's a public meeting.
sure, it's a public meeting and we need to have minutes and we need to have.
Yeah. It's one set of minutes.
Good.
Okay, we can solve that.
We, under some circumstances where we've had a quorum at somebody else's meeting, we have agreed that we just won't comment. So there's no question of deliberation, but I think in this case, you just as soon have us question.
Right, I think that's the point.
Okay, I will warn the committee, we can, what time? This is
6:30.
Well, the
We'll figure out.
public announcement was for 7.
Okay.
It was in
7.
Cricket today, maybe.
Okay.
In the select board section.
But I just think
That
that
can be
that
changed.
we expedite the number of, we
Minimize the number.
of actual, the length of meetings, not the number.
Okay. People ready to approve meeting minutes from April 11th and 18th?
I move that we approve the minutes.
Wait a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Richard said aye.
Richard says aye too, okay. Any comment from the public? Anyone wish to speak? Maybe it's just us.
No.
You don't follow us anymore.
Which is
Galaxy
boring.
15.
Galaxy.
In that case, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a motion from the planning board to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah,
Please eat these cookies.
Did somebody bake these?
They're supposed to be coming to the finance.
I was at a memorial service and we all
Actual zoning.
everybody brought stuff. And so I was helping clean up. And they were going all to the fire department and the
Yes. The 16.
police department. But there was
It's important.
No, it was good, that was very good.
I mean, there's
When it hasn't been done.
financial analysis,
Yeah.
whatever that level.
Company.
Oh,
Hi, I'm Sue Gilbert. I've seen you, but.
Mark President.
Later.
Yes. Yes.
And you know Gar, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I know.
We sit on the dip together.
Long ago with the elementary, the high school, right?
Thank you for volunteering.
Oh, and I was.
You got the first one, on the first building committee.
I can send an email.
The first one that failed.
As chair of the finance committee.
And he came back.
Asking for that information.
He was you were the
And then
one
they can
carryover
ask.
from
Yeah,
the first building, right?
Right, everybody else.
Yeah, yeah.
And I interviewed with you.
I know.
Well, the two of you really got it.
I agree.
George Sharp always talked about that.
CSD financial.
Asking if he was gonna get divorced or anything during. Maybe CS Jessica. Did you see my note about Charlie?
And I said that as chair of the finance committee, I can send an email to the planning. board.
No.
Apparently she had cancer, but
We go.
you know, I didn't see him at Sugarloaf this year. We went up there very much and I, that, anyway.
That was here.
62.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Life thing, thanks.
Thank you. Laura.
Yeah. Now,
Yeah, I do. Listening to you talk and fascinating.